Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Suisuki. Coming up, should Luxon step in to resolve the Cook Islands impasse?
It's a suspension, in other words, of funding, and it's a punishment that the Cook Islands government is facing.
We take a look at some of the stories making headlines around the Pacific, and Taiwan officials in Fiji accuse China of coercion after diplomats' visit to Taipei. An international relations expert says New Zealand's Prime Minister should have stepped in to fix New Zealand's diplomatic spat with Cook Islands, as his foreign minister is making things worse. A second round of funding to the realm nation has been paused by the government, totalling almost $30 million over 2 years. But despite the months-long impasse, Christopher Luxon remains confident in Winston Peters. Tiwila Fortai has more.
The details of the additional funding suspension are laid out in a letter from Winston Peters to Cook's Prime Minister Mark Brown. It's an extra $11 million on top of the $18 million announced earlier this year. Geopolitical analyst Geoffrey Miller is clear on what the cut represents.
And let's just be clear what we're talking about. When New Zealand uses this language of about a pause on funding, it's a suspension, in other words, of funding, and it's a punishment that the Cook Islands government is facing.
The disagreement stems from 4 partnership agreements Mark Brown signed with China at the beginning of the year. The New Zealand government believes it should have been consulted over the agreements, while Mr Brown disagrees. Geoffrey Miller believes Foreign Minister Winston Peters' approach has made things worse.
Winston Peters' only solution, it seems, is to escalate further. And that's when I think the Prime Minister needs to come in. I mean, look, the Prime Minister is deeply involved in foreign affairs matters. He is really just as responsible for foreign affairs matters as the Foreign Affairs Minister.
Geoffrey Miller reckons it's clear Mark Brown and Winston Peters do not get on. But Christopher Luxon says the Cook Islands government is at fault and there's no need for him to step in.
We've seen agreements signed with other countries that we actually want to make sure that there is mitigation plans in place dealing with some of the risks that we see as a government as it pertains to security and defence.
He wouldn't give further details of the plans he wanted to see, but says New Zealand's funding will remain paused until the impasse is repaired.
The Cook Islands has certain rights under the free association model, but they also have responsibilities to engage with us on those issues. As we've seen from the beginning of the year, that hasn't been the case, and it certainly hasn't been to the standard that we need it to be at as well.
Sione Tekiteki, who's a Pacific policy expert, says the broader geopolitical context is important. He believes both Mr Luxon and Mr Peters will be aware of how New Zealand's response is being perceived by its Five Eyes partners.
There's another issue about New Zealand not wanting its alliance partners to think that it's not holding up its end of the bargain, particularly around this geostrategic competition. That's very important because understanding that, you can assess why New Zealand is taking quite a hard line.
He thinks New Zealand is trying to leverage the Cook Islands public to put pressure on Prime Minister Brown and his leadership.
New Zealand is probably thinking, if we play this out, the public is not going to support the political leadership on this issue once they start putting aid on the table and once other things that Cook Island citizens enjoy from New Zealand.
For now, the Cook Islands and New Zealand governments remain, as Geoffrey Miller describes, at loggerheads, with those in both nations watching closely for progress.
Now for a quick look at some of the stories making headlines in the region so far this week, I'm joined by our Pacific editor, Koroi Hawkins. Talofa lava, Koroi.
Malobula sana.
Let's start in the Cook Islands. Have there been any fresh developments in the spat between Wellington and Avarua?
Yes, so since our latest report, the Cook Islands government has responded to email queries from RNZ Pacific. The Cook Islands government says it remains committed to the enduring relationship of free association with New Zealand. A Cook Islands government spokesperson says the country continues to engage with New Zealand in good faith to restore confidence and strengthen cooperations. However, it says these discussions are ongoing, so they say it would not be appropriate to comment further. So ongoing conversations there off the back of that report from Te Wila Fuatai.
Over to Papua New Guinea now. It looks like there's been some trouble at a university there.
Yeah, this one's a story we're still picking up and catching up on. This happened over the weekend. So there was a massive disturbance and fight at the Goroka University in Papua New Guinea, and dozens of students ended up in hospital along with some locals. The Commissioner of Police, David Manning, the Post-Courier is reporting, has condemned what he calls selfish and stupid behavior of students on local villages involved in the violent confrontation. He's confirmed the deployment of additional police from mobile squads and surrounding provincial commands, which has brought back normality to Goroka Township. Some of the reports we're seeing are that governors from different provinces are starting to evacuate their students from the area off the back of this. Commissioner Manning has so far pointed to this being alcohol-fueled behavior, and he called it unacceptable and disappointing to see. So keeping tabs on that one, Sana.
In Fiji, the health minister has hit out at the media over issues at the main hospital in Suva.
Yes, that's right. The health ministry has responded to reports in their local papers. They've confirmed that 2 operating theatres at the main hospital in Suva were forced to close after a blocked drainage caused wastewater spillage. However, they have been critical in a public advisory of media reporting. The health ministry saying that the spillage was sluice wastewater spillage and not raw sewage as alleged by media reports. Some of the media reporting said that people had actually died waiting for treatment because 4 out of 8 operating theatres were not functioning. So quite a serious situation.
And to Tonga now, where it's not too far away from polling day now, right?
That's right, Sana. Voter registrations, Matangi Tonga reporting voter registrations closed for the 20 November general election on the 6th of November. That's last week. The Office of the Electoral Commission has been accepting late registrations since September, providing a final opportunity for the public to register, particularly those who turned 21 after the initial registration deadline. We're obviously hoping to be over there, Sana, for the election, so preparing as well to head over. Will be quite an interesting election. Provisional voter figures released by the Electoral Commission in February indicated a total of 62,000 voters in Tonga. And on election day, Thursday, the 20th of November, polling stations will be open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. for registered voters to vote for their people's representatives. And there's also, as you know, Noble's representatives will vote among themselves from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the same day. So just a little over a week out now before polling opens in Tonga.
Not too long to go now. All right, we've got some students in Samoa who are unhappy about transport. What's going on there?
Yes, quite an interesting story, this one, from the Samoa Observer. So apparently there was some conflict in bus routes with the visiting cruise ship, the MS Nuadam, causing some students, many students, they're reporting, to miss their morning classes. It's reporting, the Samoa Observer is reporting hundreds of National University of Samoa students were unhappy with this situation. According to the students, only one NUS bus was available to serve commuters after other buses were assigned to shuttle tourists arriving at the Matautu Wharf. So, interesting one there. Questions, the Observer says, have been sent to the National University of Samoa to clarify if there is a contractual obligation for the buses that transport students. And it said there are multiple companies providing the bus services to the local university. Also, still a little bit in Samoa, I was noticing quite a nice story also in the Observer there about a parade for the Toa Samoa of the weekend being held on the water. because of the bans on the parades in the streets. So I thought that was quite an interesting one as well. That I had some really nice pictures.
And finally, looking north to the US Pacific territories and affiliated states, some good news potentially out of Washington.
Yes, that's right, Sana. So after weeks and weeks of the federal government shutdown, CNN is reporting today a small band of Senate Democrats have voted with Republicans to approve a funding measure to reopen the federal government without securing their party's demand to guarantee an extension of an enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies, which help millions of Americans afford insurance. Obviously, in the North Pacific, we have several territories, including American Samoa, that have also been affected by the government shutdown. So they'll be watching this very closely. It looks like the funding compromise will now go to the House, where the GOP leaders are hopeful it could pass as soon as Wednesday local time and end the longest ever US shutdown of government.
That was RNZ Pacific editor Koroi Hawkins with our Pacific News Wrap. Thank you, Tomas Koroi.
Tēnā hola sana.
The Taipei Trade Office in Suva is accusing China of coercion after a senior Fijian diplomat made a rare visit to Taipei. China lashed out at Fiji last Thursday after the Fijian ambassador to the United Nations met Taiwan's vice president. Beijing says Filippo Tarakinikini's trip to Taipei violated the One China policy. Margot Staunton has more on the story.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning expressed strong dissatisfaction and said that Beijing had lodged a formal protest with the Fijian government over the incident. During a press briefing in Beijing, Mao emphasised China's staunch opposition to any official interactions between countries that maintain diplomatic relations with China and Taiwan.
The visit to Taiwan seriously violates Fiji's political commitment to the One China principle. The despicable actions of the Taiwan regime will get nowhere.
Fiji's coalition government moved to appease Beijing on Friday, saying that it reaffirms its commitment to the One China policy. In a Facebook post, it said,
"The government values its diplomatic relations with China, which are grounded in mutual respect and cooperation, and its adherence to the principles of sovereignty and non-interference. The government remains committed to strengthening the diplomatic ties and ensuring that all official actions align with Fiji's foreign policy positions and international obligations."
Taipei Trade Office representative in Suva, Joseph Chow, told Radio New Zealand Pacific in an email that it regrets attempts by Beijing to pressure other countries over legitimate exchanges.
Taiwan is a sovereign and democratic nation whose government and people independently decide their international engagements. Taiwan has never been governed by China, and its status is based on historical and democratic legitimacy. Constructive engagement and mutual respect, not coercion, is the key to maintaining peace, development and resilience across the Blue Pacific.
Chow said Tarakinikini's trip to Taipei was conducted in his personal and professional capacity, but was not an official state-level mission representing the Fijian government. Tarakinikini met Vice President Xiao Mei-ching and Foreign Minister Ling Jia-long, among others. Taiwan's presidential office said on Wednesday that Tarakinikini was part of a delegation of other UN ambassadors, including from the Marshall Islands and Paraguay, which are Taiwanese allies. Chow said the discussions focused on regional cooperation, sustainable development, climate resilience and humanitarian partnership.
Although Taiwan and Fiji do not maintain formal diplomatic relations, the two sides have enjoyed decades of close and friendly cooperation, especially in agriculture, education and public health. These informal ties have produced tangible benefits for local communities and reflect the spirit of partnership that defines Taiwan's engagement with the Pacific.
The Chinese embassy in Fiji posted a statement about Taiwan last Thursday, which said,
"Taiwan is part of China. The question of Taiwan's status was conclusively settled in 1945 with China's victory in the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression and the global victory over fascism. Taiwan's return to China is both a fruit of World War II and an integral part of the post-war international order. A victory won through blood and sacrifice of the Chinese people, including their compatriots in Taiwan.
The statement said no false narrative peddled by anti-China forces can overturn that fact. Taiwan is not a member of the United Nations, but there are 12 countries that are diplomatic allies. Palau, Tuvalu and the Marshall Islands are Taiwan's only remaining allies in the Pacific. Nauru switched its allegiance to China in 2024, while Taiwan cut ties with Solomon Islands in 2019. Kiribati supported China between 1980 and 2003 when they switched to Taiwan. They later renewed their ties with Beijing in 2019.
All the government statements in this piece were voiced by RNZ reporters. That's Pacific Waves for today. Tomorrow, we head to Brazil to check out the latest from COP30. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā, soi fua.